So there's a kind of a wide range of stuff that we actually do, and what we also try to ensure is that we are not trying to do that alone. We also work with partners in the community. We have received funding as well from Paddy Tipping, and quite a lot of that we spend on young people that come through what we call our child criminal exploitation panel. So young kids that may get involved in county lines, drug dealing, gangs, etc., that would go through our child criminal exploitation panel. We can put together bespoke packages, etc., to work with them. So it's a variety of things, right from the preventative end right up to the statutory end, where young kids may be coming out of custody. So basically that's what I do.
Thank you very much, Rob.
I'll stand up for those at the back because I can see you as well. My name is Matt Healy. I'm the incoming area commander, superintendent area commander responsible for the City of Nottingham. So I've been in post for probably about 8 weeks or so now. And obviously in this context, the kind of enforcement part of the whole knife crime, youth violence agenda, but I do stress the word part. That is a critical but a stressed part of the solution that we want to work to. I spoke recently at a Stephen Lawrence Memorial event and just talked about my kind of journey into this position here, because it's fairly an unusual one within policing, in so much as by trade I've been a murder SIO for some years, leading murder investigations across the East Midlands. Kind of aligned to that, I'm also one of the Nottinghamshire Police Family Liaison Coordinators that orchestrates the response and the investigations within the family of those affected by homicide, and included in that has been, very tragically, the knife murders of adults and children. So approaching this post now, it's very towards the front of my agenda that we actually really need to get ahead of the game here, because once my agency is involved, arguably we're too late. As soon as that child or young person, or adult for that matter, has picked up that knife, then it's too late. We're into enforcement. Paddy touched on some of the context in Nottinghamshire. We have seen an increase in knife crime over the year end 2018, 9.5%. That's 77 more offences than the year before. Any rise is unwelcome. It is a rise that's lower than our regional colleagues, so Leicestershire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire, Northamptonshire. Paddy's touched on, we've got the only dedicated knife crime team outside of the Metropolitan Police area, and a team that we continue to resource and to hopefully put into the right areas. Enforcement, arguably too late. We recognise our responsibility to try and get ahead of the game, and we welcome the kind of public health debate that's going on at the moment. As a force, as an enforcement agency, we've committed to a number of things to try and help the agenda. We've committed to putting police officers back into schools. We withdrew from schools some years ago, but Chief Constable has been very clear that we want police officers back and working in schools for a whole range of reasons, in terms of role models, interventions, all the benefits that can bring. We've invested in a police cadet scheme for 16 to 18 year olds as part of the whole kind of civic service element. So we want to do our part to get people involved in positive work and positive community work and volunteering at that. We've pushed a concept called the mini police, which is really, really popular amongst primary schools. So we are, again, dedicating officers and giving up time for people to go and work positively in schools with younger age group children. We're the first force to roll out the Police Constable Degree Apprenticeship Scheme, where we've got a scheme where people can come to us, we'll put them through university and we will fund their degree, so they come out with a degree in policing and a job within the force as a police officer with no cost. We really want to focus that into communities where we've not traditionally had a lot of people want to come and join the force and come and join the work that we do. So again, a really good scheme in my view, with really good outcomes. We'll talk, I'm sure, today about stop and search relative to knife crime. I'm sure we'll talk about that quite a lot. We've got a ride-along scheme, which is this is a shameless plug for that scheme, where the public can come to us and come out with our officers on the front line. There's an element of vetting, but it's not very onerous. We would really encourage and welcome people from the communities to come and spend time with our officers on their shifts and have a look at the work that they're doing. We've just invested in the first robbery team we've had for a good while. A lot of the knife crime problem particularly comes out of robberies, where the knives are actually used or threatened, or it is a verbal threat of one, but we've dedicated a robbery team to try and address some of the issues around that. Will's touched on criminal exploitation panels. We've got an excellent, from my perspective, we've got an excellent partnership, certainly here in Nottingham City. I work in the city, I'm sure the county likewise, but we have had fantastic support as we've kind of matured with the whole knife crime agenda as a police force. In response to operational incidents, we've had protracted multi-agency meetings, risk managing vulnerable young people around those issues. We're working very hard to try and mainstream that, and I think through the criminal exploitation panels, we're getting very, very close to having achieved that. A couple more short points on a kind of separate agenda really. There's been a whole shift in what the police do with people on bail to a concept of released under investigation. We kind of had people on bail, strung out for many, many months and occasions very, very many years. Well, it was too far one way. My own view, we've kind of then gone too far the other way with not putting conditions on people once they're released from custody but not charged. Our feedback from your justice partners and others is actually when this is children involved in knife crime, they're not feeling that they're under any kind of scrutiny or conditions. So we're trying to get that back proportionately the other way, moving and using conditional bail to help reinforce the diversions that I hope we'll be discussing throughout the course today. And just finally, as an enforcement agency, often we are the very first responders to knife crime. We want to make sure that our frontline officers have got the skills and the equipment and the training to actually respond to the kind of heightened medical emergency that many of these incidents are. And I've seen, through personal experience in recent months and years, some fantastic work by those officers arriving on the scene quickly, particularly some of our armed officers with the paramedic kind of level of training. And without doubt, there are children and young people alive today because of that training and that equipment. So again, I really, really champion making sure that that's available to our frontline officers. So I'm sure, again, I've not gone heavily into stop and search, but I'm sure we'll touch that through the day. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If you could keep it relatively brief, please, because there will be other opportunities for you to expand on your roles and responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecile. Good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Waiting. I'm the Director at Edinburgh Council. And for the last 15 months, I've been supporting Paddy and his office, put the strategy together that's on your document, on your desks, and then more important, for the last 10 or 11 months, really looking at the action plan and the funded activity that will make the strategy come to life on the ground. So my role has been very much about supporting and putting things in place across Nottinghamshire, and that's the city and the county. And I've done my very best to help coordinate city council and county council and the district and the boroughs to work together to make the plan mean something. And I think we've made some very good progress. So things like street doctors, violence interrupters on the streets, mentoring programs in school. We made some significant progress, but for me, I definitely want to listen, learn, and reflect. I think the bits the aspects that we need to do more on, and speak to Paddy about this, is the voice of families and victims, the voice and influence of young people, and broadly we need to listen more to the community energy around stopping the knife violence epidemic that we are in, to a lesser degree in other places. So I've been very much about doing things and supporting the doing of the plan, and I'm absolutely really looking forward to the day. So thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Imran Mohammed. I'm the Regional Programme Manager for Redthread. We've got the youth work team based at the Queen's Medical Centre here, and we've been working since March 2018. In short, our youth violence intervention workers are there within the ED departments. When young people come in as a result of youth violence, or as where there are concerns around criminal or sexual exploitation or sexual violence, the youth workers are there alongside clinical colleagues. So once the amazing life-saving work has been done to make the young person stable, the youth workers go straight in to start trying to identify in that teachable, reachable moment what needs to happen to keep the young person safe within the hospital and actually help them stop ever coming back in again as well. So they'll do the work there, they'll do the safety plan within the hospital, and then they'll do the follow-up work in the community as well, scaffolding them into longer-term work. Now, obviously, that's a huge part of the work that we try to do, and we're very conscious of the fact that we can't do this alone. We're a very small part of a much bigger solution. And actually hearing from families, from communities around how we can do this better, how we can link up the support for young people to be more sustainable on a long-term basis is hugely important to the work that we do. So as they said as well, I'm really looking forward to hearing from yourselves later on today.
Good morning, my name is Rachel Miller. I'm Group Manager for Early Help and Youth Justice Services in the County Council. So where Wilf covers the city, I do a very similar job in the county. So I manage the Nottinghamshire Youth Justice Service and work closely with also our Universal Youth Service on the kind of spectrum of support for young people, right from universal services that any young person in the council can access, all the way through to our most challenging young people who are in the criminal justice system. Perhaps they are detained or that we're working with them to reduce their reoffending. We have in Nottinghamshire one of the biggest youth services in the country. We still have 34 youth centres across the county, and they haven't been closed as they have in some areas, which is fantastic. One of the things that we're interested about is how can we target our support to the right places. We have some additional funding coming in that will allow us to deliver what we call detached youth work. We can send youth workers to the right places, doing maybe a more unique range of activities, but it's about making sure that we're targeting those at the right places, to the right kids, and that we're doing the right stuff with them. Going on from that, we also have, within my area of services, parenting services, so that might be parenting courses or support to parents. And we're doing more to try and make that a better offer for the community. So an example would be we've got something called Empowering Parents, Empowering Communities. We call it EPEC. This is where we work with parents to then go on to run their own support group. So we will teach a parent how to deliver a parenting course, and they will then go and deliver that in their community. It's really small at the moment, but we've got some funding to expand that. And we're hoping for some more funding to work with some other community organisations to expand what we're doing. Really feel like parents are the key to working with some young people rather than just directing our support at the young people themselves. I'm really interested to hear about any ideas about that today. And then just so that you're aware, much like Wilf, I chair something called Youth Violence and Criminal Exploitation Panel for the county. So this is where our very high-risk young people, those young people who we really feel are likely to commit or be the victim of a violent offence, we come together as professionals to discuss them, to make sure that we're happy with the management plan that we have, that we're doing absolutely everything that we can to keep them safe. And I think that throughout that offer that we have from Universal right through to that very targeted intervention, the thing is, how do we make sure we know about the right kids? How do we make sure that we're getting the messages about who it is that we need to be working with and supporting and talking about? Thank you.
Good morning everyone, my name is Bob Bean and I'm Head of Nottingham City and Nottinghamshire for the Reducing Reoffending Partnership, and we deliver around about 60% of probation services alongside my colleague Nigel Hill, who's the head of the National Probation Service in Nottinghamshire. So if I just talk about the probation service generally in terms of delivery of all that services. So we have a statutory responsibility to work with 18 plus, so an adult criminal justice service. And we work with those that are being made subject to court orders through the court and been into custody and come out on some form of licensed supervision. So I think, as said by some my colleagues in the Youth Justice Service and police, often by the time somebody enters the criminal justice system, and particularly for those of us working for those over 18, somebody's quite a way down the line, and one could say it's not too late, but there's quite a lot of things that perhaps haven't happened in the past. So quite a frustration for me in an adult service is that we don't have a preventative arm, and often when we're starting to work with people after their 18th birthday, there's quite a lot of issues that are quite entrenched, that are quite difficult to work with. I think what I would say in Nottingham is that we in Nottinghamshire that we have a very strong partnership between statutory agencies and quite established relationships. I think what the agenda that we're talking about today requires is a much broader partnership, and I think what I would hope would come out today is that a very clear message for those of us that work in statutory organisations, but I think we know already, is that the solution to what we're talking about today sits far beyond the criminal justice system, and the criminal justice system often just picks up the pieces about work that can happen earlier down the line. So I'm very keen to how we can join what the statutory agencies do with what actually where some I think the real solutions sit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you all hear me? Yeah, thank you to our panellists. We've already heard from Paddy.